it doesn't matter what age you're at. If you're around, the people that you're around are going to impact the way you respond, behave, and believe. And I think that having that understanding that that is still the case as an adult. You know what I mean? If you gravitate around the cubicle that, complaining and negativity is happening, that's going to become who you are.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling podcast. And whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on one of the platforms, we are glad you are here today. Got some exciting things we're going to be talking about. But before we get to that, I want to, again, remind you to subscribe and share because we are going after 50,000 subscribers. We surpassed the 25 and we're running after 50. We'd love for you to be a part of that. So click the button there and share it with somebody because hopefully our heart is to partner with you so that you can reach your potential. In other words, you can be everything that God had in mind when he knit you together. You are made for greatness. And it's a process and a journey in which we gather the tools and skills that we need in order to get there. And that's why I wrote this book. It's been out for about a month and a half, but I'm excited because it was really hard for me to do it because I was nervous about it. And but I think it's an incredible story because it's not my story. It's the story of God's people being enslaved and led to the promise. And we all go through this process of where we are to get to where God dreamed for us to go. And that's really what the book is about. And so if you haven't picked up a copy, and if you do, could you review it? It'd make a big difference. And we live stream, by the way.
That we do.
And because in case you don't know, Carson Luke is here as well.
Yes. Excited to be back.
Yes.
What an honor.
Your hair still has that camp view?
Yes. It got way blonder from being out in the sun. And I bleached it again. So both and, but from the sun, it got now it's like blonde.
Right. Yeah, if you wash it with a purple shampoo, it keeps it.
I have done that as well.
Oh, you've become quite the stylist.
Now. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. We'll see how long it lasts because it's quite the upkeep.
Yes.
To keep your hair this blonde.
Yes.
So we'll see how long it lasts.
I had that for a while.
Yeah.
And
it's been amazing how many people have said you look like your dad with me dyeing my hair.
And how does that make you feel?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm glad. Except for your dad doesn't have, you've got a thicker mustache.
I don't know about
you could
that.
grow a beard.
I can't. I wish I
Well,
could.
no. It looks, right here.
You're gassing me up right now and I appreciate it.
No, but right here it looks like you couldn't in the front.
Oh, thank you.
But all through here, it looks like you probably could.
I don't know. Maybe I just gotta let it go. There's so many patchy parts that I feel like my wife tells me it doesn't look great.
Well, and your brother can.
So unfair.
Yeah.
So unfair. I think he's from a different family.
He's like he's like Stephanie's dad.
Yeah.
But anyways, you and I you have more hair on your arm. I have no hair on my arms.
Yeah. It's all kind of light right now from all the sun, but
I don't know what that means. That, I have no hair on. When I was in college, they used to think I shaved my legs. Because I'm playing basketball.
Would you fight? I promise I don't.
Yeah. And by the way, I wish I had a picture if I could, because back in the day we had real pictures. We didn't have foam pictures. I won a Mr. Legs contest.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Yes.
Look at you. It's probably the hairless legs.
I couldn't wear win a beard contest. But, but back then people did. I don't remember anybody growing up with a beard.
Really? I feel like now majority of the kids in the youth ministry have beards.
Do they?
By the time they're in 9th grade, it's unfair. It's unfair.
I couldn't have. Yeah.
Would you grow one if you could?
I don't. I figure they're probably itchy.
Huh.
I don't know. I would do what Stephanie told me.
That's a good answer.
All right. I wanted us to talk a little bit today about how do you raise up people? I shared that I really think, I don't want to stop with one book. We'll see what happens, but working on ideas and even thoughts about how do you take potential beyond yourself and then, into the next generation? How do you mentor people and those kind of things? Because what we don't want to happen is, in the book, I quote How the Mighty Fall, which is one of my favorite authors, business authors, is Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great.
Yeah.
He wrote the Built to Last, and How the Mighty Fall. And he says, or what I write about what he says is, after studying how great companies were made, he wrote, in Built to Last, he wrote this, How the Mighty Fall, and why some companies never give up. And he identified 5 stages of decline in successful companies. And I thought these were really interesting. His first one was arrogance and entitlement, born to succeed, where you just get too confident, I guess, start making bad decisions, thinking everything you say and do is right.
Yeah. It's easy to find that.
One of the things that I've felt that's been hard for me is when you're first starting, okay, this is the vision, this is what we need to do. And, you run after that. Then after you've been somewhere for a while, or you've gotten older, right? And then somebody younger has an idea. It's very difficult to determine, or for me it is. I don't know if everybody that's watching and listening today, but for me, sometimes it's really difficult to determine what's a bad idea.
Right.
And what's, it's easy for me to say, well, we've tried that, it didn't work, or we tried a version of that, it didn't work, or I really see some issues with what you're wanting to do, versus, okay, hey, we may have tried something like that, but that was 5 years ago. Things have changed, or, you're a different leader than the one who tried to do it. And sometimes it's really hard to determine between what's wisdom,
right,
and what's resistance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's funny because I've always wanted to ask you that. I believe that on staff, you're the person who's been doing ministry for the longest.
I like the way you put
that. And so there's got to be situations where your opinion differs from someone else's or a group of other people. And you got to wrestle with that. Like, okay, is this because I've been doing it longer? I know. Or is this, I'm closed off to new ideas? And, on a smaller scale, but I felt that with the youth team, because as a youth team, we've got someone who's brand new, someone who is like kind of middle of the pack. And then I've been doing it the longest. And it's really easy to fall into, it's always me telling them, okay, this is what we need to do. This is what needs to happen. This is, rather than listening to what they believe needs to happen, needs to get done. We should try. And when they do, it's easy for me to just chalk it up to, well, I've tried that. I've done that. I've been there. And it can be really challenging in that. It can be really challenging when you've been doing it for a while to accept the fact that you do not know it all, that you don't have all the answers, and that what didn't work in the past, it could work today. And to accept that can be difficult and hurt the pride, for sure.
Well, and then, what I've learned too is often, because I want that next generation to succeed and to grow. So I try to hear what they say and say, okay, but then when it doesn't work, often those folks are, they don't stick around to deal with the mess if it doesn't work, and then it's real easy to say, well, I just don't want to, if I do what I know, then I know what I do,
right.
Whereas if I do what you think and then it doesn't go well, are you going to stick around and help us rebuild that? Or are you going to help us to do that, differently? And people often don't, but I think it's, becoming arrogant and not listening to others is a real.
Absolutely. Well, and when it comes to that, for me, the way I've kind of broken down in my head is what's going to lead to success is longevity of, not the only thing, but one of the things is longevity of a staff team. You're always going to have transition. They're going to be moving in and out, and that's understandable. But if I can get people that can stick around for a little bit, and grow into something more, that's going to lead to greater success. And so the issue with that is I want them to jump in where I'm at. There's really no way for that to happen because I had to go through a process of being led by another person. I had to make mistakes. I remember when, Tyler Sturbin is his name, and he was my boss. He was the youth pastor. He went off to help with a campus in Pensacola. And so now I'm the youth pastor. And I remember just all the thoughts of, well, I know how to do it and I know what I'm going to change. And I had to go through all of that. And I think sometimes we think we can get to a place where others that we raise up don't have to go through, but they do. And so I found what can often happen is out of my desire to move forward and progress, I cannot allow the people that I'm raising up to make those mistakes because I feel like I don't have time for it. I don't have, when in reality, them learning from those mistakes will grow them into a person that's going to launch us so much further and so much faster than me just trying to control it. Me becoming arrogant and assuming it rests on me and me alone. And so therefore, I don't have time for you to learn this mistake. I don't have time for you to go this way. And then it becomes very difficult for any new person to jump in and move, because we all have to grow. And so it can be difficult for that person to do that because there's already so many limitations that have been set because of my past experience. And so, when someone comes in, I try my very best to, hey, I want you to have freedom. Now, there are certain things that we're just not going to do, but I want you to have freedom to be able to make, and there may be some that I'm like, I don't know if this will work. I don't know if this, we've done this before. And some of that will be growth for them. And some of it will teach me that, hey, what didn't work previous, it doesn't mean it's never going to work.
Well, we all want grace, but we're not real good at giving grace.
Yeah.
I remember when Joel first became pastor, and really out of the gate, he had a lot of success as far as reaching people.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, and he got judged real harshly, and I thought, well, he's having to learn in front of, tens of thousands of people how to do this, where, the first church I pastored had 100 people.
Right.
And it wasn't on TV and nobody knew, when I misspoke or misunderstood something. And, grace is giving the folks that we lead that opportunity to become who God's created them to be without, it doesn't mean we don't challenge or speak truth, but that we don't destroy them in the process, And so he says arrogance, right? Arrogance can keep us from raising people up. And then he says an undisciplined pursuit of more, obsessed with growth. In other words, you kind of get ahead of yourself, and in ministry, it can be that you start too many campuses too quickly, or that you empower people too quickly. Sometimes you want ready to do something and you're ready to do it now. And I think that's a common one. Everybody wants to grow. They want to impact. They want to, and if you're not careful, you can, trip yourself up too far ahead. The denial, he says, of risk and peril, blaming, refusal to face the facts. In one of the books too, he talks about, I think it's in Good to Great, how the companies that went on to be great is they dealt with the brutal facts.
Yeah.
This is where we really are. And sometimes that's really difficult to do.
Oh yeah.
Because we all want to be further than we are.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Every low weekend, there's a reason. You know what I mean? It's
that's
easy
right.
to do.
Yeah. And it's not you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's those people. And then I thought this was grasping for salvation. In other words, it's kind of like, your movies aren't doing very good, so you put Deadpool and Wolverine in the same movie. Or I saw they were bringing back the Iron Man. What's his name?
Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
As Dr. Doom.
As Dr. Doom. It's like, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But people say, and I don't know, I'm not really big into all of that. I mean, I stopped. It's beyond me. I don't know what's going
You need a PhD to be able to follow what's happening in Marvel.
Oh my goodness. But I hear people say they're just, reaching out of desperation. And you can do that. You get scared and you You think short term. That's the thing about desperation. You stop thinking long term. You start thinking about just survival.
Yeah.
And you overreact.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know,
Stop
and you,
taking risks.
and you tend to do that when things are going the wrong way, not necessarily the good way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you get, you know, things moving faster in the wrong way. And you know, grasping, you know, just trying to stay up there. You know, and I think that's the hardest thing to teach people. You know, it's like we were talking in an earlier episode when you guys were going to camp and you had some things happen. You can't, if you overreact, then everybody's going to overreact.
Right.
And then the kids are going to be stressed and it's going to be a horrible experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, you got to be careful not to freak out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You got to keep the hope. I feel like, you know, it's kind of the two sides of dealing with the brutal facts, but not getting to the point where there's no hope. And that's a delicate balance because sometimes the brutal facts feel like they rob you of your hope because the brutal facts can be so brutal. They can be difficult to deal with, you know? I remember a time in youth where like we had to deal with the brutal facts of this ministry is not where it once was. It's not even close. And having to face that, but at the same time believing, but this isn't where it's going to stay. And I just remember that being a really intricate challenge to work through with myself, and therefore the team, of just understanding that we have to accept where we are. We can't deny it. We can't, you know, these are all the reasons. But at the same time, keep the hope that, but we're going to move forward. Mm-hmm. We're not going to live in desperation. We're not going to stop taking risks. We're not going to, you know, believe that this is just where we're held to.
Well, you know, in the book, we talk about Moses, and Moses, for those of you who don't know the story, early on when he's living in the palace, he sees the Hebrews being mistreated. Yeah. He wrote, you know, he's like, those are my brothers. So he, you know, he overreacts. He kills the dude, and then he has to run and hide. And I think it's easy to do that. You know, it's easy to get scared, even though we shouldn't. I mean, God's made his promises, and, you know, he wants us to succeed more than we want to succeed ourselves. And then the last one he says is, leaders abandon all hope of building a great future and they sell out. I think that's why, I think a lot of times when pastors screw up, that's why they screw up. I think they get mad at God and mad at everybody, mad at their church, you know? And it's like, well, I'll show you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that childness that we have in all, you know,
revenge
all of us.
Almost.
Yeah. It's like kids get mad and they, you know, pound the ground or yell or whatever. And I think sometimes, you know, because because the thinking process is, if I just give up all hope, then I don't have to hurt, you know, because the pain comes from believing that there's something better than what you're living today. Yeah. Hopelessness is today is all that there is. Right. And some people take their own lives. You know, some people sell the company, you know, and give up on the dream, you know, and I think, and some people, you know, make moral mistakes. You know, they give up on their marriage, they give up on whatever, and then they just, hopeless people. When we become hopeless, we make bad decisions.
Yeah. Well, and you know, what you're talking about, like with, you know, pastors making moral mistakes, it's easy to, you know, fall into the mindset of, you know, you're constantly pouring out and you have to make sure that you have something to pour out, that, you know, otherwise you'll empty yourself. And you know, when people talk about that in terms of rest, I agree. You got to make sure you're rested. But I also think that the hope really comes from, I am filled back up by seeing what I poured into, you know, come to fruition. And so, you know, I think it's flipping that mindset of, it's not necessarily that, it's trying to keep it away from self-centered mindset of, I've got to, you know, fill myself up to be able to pour out. It's that idea that, man, what is going to fill me up is this thing that we poured out into, seeing it come to fruition, seeing it, you know, turn into what we dreamt of, you know, what God's created it to be.
Yeah, that's so. And as we've been talking, such a big part of that is who we bring on the journey with us. Mm-hmm. You know, in Exodus, and I mentioned it in the book, is that originally when the 10 plagues come and it looks like, Israel, the Hebrews, they're victorious, and the Egyptians give them some of their gold. And it says that some of the Egyptians left with them.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, this is the winning team. Let me change hats and
Right.
jerseys. But it says they didn't get very far before those Egyptians started complaining about not having the right foods. And it's like, this is a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. I want to go back. And they influenced then some of the Hebrews, and then Moses had a real challenge and difficulty. So I think, who we take with us and how we develop them along the way is important.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because I've found that we preach that to our kids and the next generation, but I think oftentimes we think that that's not the case as an adult. That, we are constantly, the message that's constantly being talked to with kids is be careful of who you hang around, because it'll impact you. And yet as adults, it seems like we just drop that understanding or belief, and all of a sudden we can hang out with whoever, and we're old enough and we're mature enough for it to not affect us. But what you're saying is so right. It doesn't matter what age you're at. If you're around, the people that you're around are going to impact the way you respond, behave, and believe. And I think that having that understanding that is still the case as an adult. If you gravitate around the cubicle that, complaining and negativity is happening, that's going to become who you are. That's not just a thing of children. That's a thing of adults as well. But at the same time, you're gravitating towards those people who are running after it, who are working towards the promotion and the new job and all that kind of, all those things. That's where your life is going to live, or lead. So,
and it's important to know what what your values are, so that can determine, where you spend your time.
Yeah.
We've seen lots of folks over the years who pursued a professional athletic career or acting or singing. And, so many of them drift, they pursue success over their values.
Right.
And then of course, us all being human, I'm not going to just say my values have changed. I'm going to say the church failed. God isn't real.
Someone else's fault.
I'm just being me, all those kind of things. But in reality is that we just chose what we think is going to lead to where we want to go.
Yeah.
And kind of fall off the road there. And I think success can do that. I've seen lots of folks go into business and they love God and feel that God's brought them a certain amount of success, but then they become successful and they get a second and a third house, and then they get a boat. And none of those things are bad or evil, but they drift. All of a sudden the things they were doing that gave them the joy and the peace of their pursuit, now it gets lost, because that's, it's just the way we are.
Right.
If you don't work out for 2 weeks, it's harder to come back.
Yeah.
If you stop eating healthy, it's harder. If you don't go to bed, once you allow yourself to drift in the wrong direction, and we always do, we're always pulled towards a ditch. We always want the Oreos, not the salad. We always want to sleep in, not get up. We always want to watch, not read, all those kind of things. And it's just so easy. And so I think when it comes to raising up and helping people, it's helping them how to deal with failure, but it's also helping them how to deal with success. And it's the same thing. It's what is our value? What's important to me? What do I value? And how do I keep that at the center of the priority? Jesus said, seek me first, and then all this other stuff takes care of itself. And that verse is there, and it's easy to say. It's not always easy to
absolutely
live out. So I know student ministry is where a lot of people begin. So how do you deal with that? Because sometimes, like, I know First Impressions is another place where a lot of people, so you're always kind of recruiting. And I'm not just talking about staff, but I'm talking about volunteers and all of that, but raising up people that you're basically going to send out to other parts of the church. And same thing with the church, right? We're raising up people who are going to start churches and be a part of other teams and move and all of that. But how do you keep a right perspective on that?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I can't really explain it without like, it's attached to my belief that if I shepherd the people, God will provide as they develop into who God's created them to be. And so, it's really easy to get caught up in how many people you need to do the job. And so if someone goes off to do something else, well, now I don't have that person do the job. The way I kind of see it is God's entrusted me to lead the people, not do the job. He will make sure, because the job is more important to him than it is to me. I mean, these students are more important to him than they are to me. Your career, your business is more important to him than it is to you. And so understanding that he will provide, I just have to do my job of shepherding. And part of shepherding is as they are developing in who God's created them, there will eventually come a point where this is no longer the place that is, they're ready for that next step. And so the biggest thing for me is to celebrate that, to, help them transition. Like, for example, seniors, by that time they're locked in with you, and a lot of them want to stick around, but it's not the best option for a lot of them. A lot of them need to grow into that next season. We have a couple students who just graduated and pushing that, hey, go to our main service, join the worship team, join the First Impressions team, because I don't want you to be trapped in this mindset forever. I want you to be able to go beyond that. And the only way to do that is to trust that if we continue to shepherd them and love on them and really are looking out for them to grow beyond the ministry to grow, well, then God will take care of the ministry. He will continue to provide the people. And to be honest, the recruiting part is the part I enjoy. So that doesn't stress. That probably helps because that doesn't stress me out a ton. I enjoy those early on, meeting someone, going to the dinners, the coffees, all that kind of stuff. I really enjoy that part. So there's a part of me that enjoys the transition of it because I'm constantly getting to do the part that I enjoy the most. But yeah, I just think that, it's our focus has to start with I'm developing people. And if it starts there, then I've just found that it'll like that verse says, you seek God and everything else will take care of itself. I believe that to be true in every area, including developing people.
It reminds me of what's in my office, and, the idea of John Wooden's quote, that you can, he said you can use basketball, to build young men, or you can use young men to build a great basketball team. And I think the same is true with ministry, right? We can use people to try to build a great ministry, or we can use ministry to build great people. And God's more, the ministry from his perspective and ours should be the people, and seeing them grow. And I always, sending people out to me is kind of like with kids, right? I think folks who may be single or without kids, or especially those with young kids, they can't ever really perceive their family being like their family. And what I mean by that is when you're raised, we had you 3 kids. And so we're raising you 3 kids, we go on vacation, we do everything together because we are our family. But I always tell Steph, I said, our kids are going to think about us the way we think about our parents. And what I mean by that is not that we hate our parents. We love our parents, but they're not involved in our life in the same way that the kids are when they're young.
Right.
And I think a lot of times parents really struggle with that reality.
Yeah.
That not that they're not going to be close to their kids, or that there needs to be a connection. And I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying it's a good difference.
Right.
The Bible says they're arrows, and that means they're not in your quiver. You're shooting them out of your quiver, and they're going to develop their own, unique family that's a part of their, if they have siblings, and a part of their parents and uncle, and that thing grows out. And I think it's true in every area of life. In ministry, it's the same thing. There are times when it's very evident that you've mentored, you've grown somebody, and they need to go into a new ministry or a different church or whatever, and it's never joyful. Right. I mean, it's because it's different, and, but you celebrate it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's good.
Right.
Even though it's not easy, it's good.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, then, it constricts.
Yeah.
If we don't want to deal with that pain, we don't raise up the next generation. We don't raise up the next leader. We don't raise up the next church pastor, because we don't want to deal with that pain.
Yeah.
And I just encourage everybody who's listening that no matter what role you play in life, there's somebody that you can mentor. There's somebody that you can pour into. There's somebody that you can help to become more than they are, because you're uniquely where you are and who you are in order to do that. Well, thanks for being here today, especially after all that's happened in the last few weeks with camp and then coming back and getting started with school and all the things that happen, fighting hurricanes.
Yep.
So hopefully, anyways, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys so much for being a part of this episode. Let me remind you once again, if you haven't picked up the book, please do so. I think it'll be an encouragement to you. It's an easy read. And if you'd leave a review, especially on Amazon, it makes a big difference. You can get it Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever it is that you get books. Hey, there's an audio version coming out. I'm very excited about that. Now. And we're even talking about a Spanish version. So
are you gonna do that one?
Yes,
in Spanish?
I'm gonna write the Spanish version. Como está usted? So
there we go. Come on now.
But anyways, look forward to that. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're on our way to 50,000. Because again, our goal is to partner with you to help you reach your potential, for you to be everything God's created you to be. That's greatness. I know it might be hard to believe sometimes, but it truly is. God bless. And we'll see you next time right here on the Troy Gramling Podcast.